Hey everyone, this is Mike from MDXpods. Originally, we were going to be doing an episode on West Side Story. We recorded the episode, and then my cat pulled out the power adapter to my dock, which was connected to our recorder, and the files got corrupted. So, what we're going to be putting up on the feed today is our bonus episode for Spider-Man No Way Home. That was originally going to be a Patreon exclusive, but I'm going to own up to it. I messed up. I messed up. What can I say? So we're going to be giving you guys this Patreon episode for free. Just check it out and then maybe support us on Patreon going forward. But that's it. Thanks. Have a happy holidays, whatever it is that you guys celebrate. Happy New Year's and whatnot. And enjoy this episode on Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a bonus, not a normal episode.
Remake, rewind.
All right, it's time for another boners episode. I do have to apologize. It's been a little bit of time since we did one. We didn't do one last month. I just started a new job and was out of the country, then out of state, and then out of state again. But my job is starting to equalize now that I'm not in my first 30 days of the job, and I'm out of training. So we're gonna get back to doing these every month. But I'm Mike, as always. With me, I've got my buddy Alex. You guys should probably know that if you're patrons, as this is a patron exclusive episode.
Yeah, what are you doing if you don't know that, honestly?
Yeah, honestly, come on, guys.
If they don't know that, then they signed up to be patrons without even hearing our podcast, which is incredibly nice.
You know what? Thank you.
Yeah, so actually, we're sorry. You don't need to know any of our names.
But this week we're really excited to talk about a movie that I've been trolling Sony for. I was trolling Sony for a long time about not getting the trailer, getting 2 Ghostbusters trailers before we even got one trailer for this. But we're going to be talking about Spider-Man Far From Home. Not Far From Home. No Way Home.
You really fucked us with that monkey paw, Mike, because every time I go to the movies these days, there's like 30 minutes of trailers.
I know, right? I mean, that was, we were getting there before the pandemic, and then the pandemic made it a lot worse because there's just so many movies they're trying to peddle. I'm hoping we get back to the 5 or 6 trailers versus the 8, 9, 10 we've been getting.
I don't know, man. I also have weirdly only been going to see 2.5-hour movies in the theaters lately. No Time to Die,
all movies are
Spider-Man
that long
No
now.
Way Home, House of Gucci, West Side Story. It's annoying.
Yeah. It just seems like movies are getting longer. Because about 2.5 hours is about as much as you can do before you start losing showings on screens. Once you hit 3 hours, you're losing the amount of times you can show it on a screen. But 2.5 hours works, so that's kind of what we get now. But I'm really excited to talk about this one. Obviously, I'm a big Spider-Man guy.
We're both big Marvel
Spider-Man
guys.
I'm looking at my bookcase just to my right, and I
see
have about
Spider-Man on your shelf.
about 100 Spider-Man toys on my right.
There's literally a different one that he's talking about behind him where I can see.
I've got a Spider-Man poster on the wall behind me. I've got a Spider-Man poster to my right. I've got 2 Spider-Man paintings that people have made for me. Comic books all over the walls. I am a Spider-Man guru. I love Spider-Man. So really excited to talk about this one. And we'll do just a few minutes of spoiler free, just so if you haven't got to it, it just came out a few days ago. It's not even a week old. It's 4 days at this point. Second biggest opening of all time behind Infinity or Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest opening in December of all time. Doesn't matter that it's some pandemic. So this is a huge movie.
Yeah,
and of course we had to talk about it. But we'll give you our first kind of high-level overview, non-spoiler kind of point of view, and then we'll cut into spoilers. But I'll let Alex go first and kind of tell us where his head's at, what he thought about it, spoiler-free, of course.
Yeah, man. I really enjoyed it, a lot. It was, I think it's one of the best Marvel movies I've seen in a while, too.
Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah, it really is. Lots of cheers. We saw it with a really good crowd.
Me too.
Except for the people sitting directly to our left who were talking the entire time, but
Fuckers.
They seemed to enjoy it as well. Yeah, lots of cheers, lots of fist pumps from the crowd. There's so many crowd pleasing moments and multiple tear jerking moments. I got choked up multiple times during this movie.
This movie is probably the darkest Spider-Man movie,
Yeah.
which is odd because it's still an MCU movie, which is generally not very dark. But
Yeah.
this movie was pretty dark. I also enjoyed it. Surprisingly, this is not my favorite Spider-Man movie. We're going to get into spoilers. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that I kind of knew, or suspected would happen. Some things I was wrong about. Some things I was right about. I thought this movie was fantastic. It was everything that I wanted from this movie and more.
Yeah.
But I actually still think I just rewatched. I should have said it on the episode we just recorded on West Side Story. But I rewatched both Far From Home and No Way Home in the last 2 weeks. So to get ready for this, but I think Far From Home is still my favorite Spider-Man movie. I just was blown away by what they did with Mysterio, because I always thought Mysterio was just not a villain you can do on screen, and they knocked it out of the park with Jake Gyllenhaal.
It's hard to compare this to other Spider-Man movies because
and we'll get into the reason why.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it, as far as we can say without going into spoilers, there are a lot of other characters in this movie. And it ends up feeling like, Doctor Strange is on the poster. So even just that alone, it feels more like an Avengers type of movie.
Right. And we know from the trailers and the posters and the TV spots that you have the original Green Goblin. You have Alfred Molina back as Doc Ock. We know Lizard's in it. We know Elektra's in it. We know Sandman's in it. Yeah. So, a ton of villains. And Spider-Man 3 was plagued with issues because of having so many villains. So, this really was a movie that could have gone really bad in a different direction. And we did Eternals. We did a bonus episode on Eternals, and we didn't hate it, but I put it on my bottom. It is dead last for me in the Marvel movies. Eternals. Shang-Chi was middle bottom, but still very enjoyable. And Black Widow, we both were like, this is fine, but it's just kind of whatever. We both kind of put it towards our bottom. So it's there haven't been any
Marvel movies. I don't think the Marvel is calling it Phase 4, but there haven't been any movies in what we can call Phase 4 that have really got me super excited about Marvel. And it's been we've had the pandemic, so it's kind of all right, whatever. Everything feels weird. This is the first time where I was like, oh shit, Marvel.
I was pumped, ready to go, and obviously
since Endgame actually.
We're both AMC A-list members because we go to the movies all the damn time, and
we're on each other's
they have the first time ever there was an NFT from AMC and everything, so there was that buzz around it too, and all the anticipation, because there were all these rumors of the previous Spider-Man being involved in it, and what is this black suit that he has? Is it a symbiote suit? All these different things, all these rampant speculation of what was going to happen. I had, I'll just say this at the top, one of my fan theories that I came up with that we talked about on other things like WandaVision and all the other TV shows and What If. I thought that this was because it took place, around Christmas. I thought it was almost going to be like It's a Wonderful Life, and he gets pulled from reality to reality to show that, Spider-Man's a consistent thing and it's good, and you need to have Spider-Man in the universe. I even thought Mephisto was going to show up in it. I thought Doctor Strange was going to be Mephisto. I was wrong. I was pleasantly surprised. I was 100% sure that Doctor Strange was Mephisto based off the trailers, and I was wrong. So I really enjoyed this movie. I can't really talk about anything else without going into spoilers. This still, I would probably put this in my top 3 to 5 Marvel movies, and it's probably my second favorite Spider-Man movie of all time. Wow. So it's definitely up there.
The first one, Into the Spider-Verse?
Oh, I honestly I almost don't count that in the same thing because it's animated and it's just a completely different thing and separated.
Yeah, it's so different.
Into the Spider-Verse would probably be my favorite. If I went anything that went to a theater, Into the Spider-Verse probably is my favorite.
Yeah.
But for the live action ones is what I was talking about. This is my second favorite.
Your favorite is Far From Home?
I think Far From Home. I really like Far From Home.
Tobey.
So the issue was funny. So I worked at the movie theater when Spider-Man 2 came out, and I watched it 1,000 times. Every break and lunch I watched it. And it was my favorite. It was my favorite of the original 3 for a long time. I have now gone back to liking the original one more than the second one, mainly because everyone gave Spider-Man 3 shit for having emo Spider-Man. But Spider-Man 2, he literally lost his powers because he was sad. That is the most emo Spider-Man there is. So, and also Doc Ock. Doc Ock is my favorite Spider-Man villain. Mm-hmm. And as much as I love Alfred Molina, that version of Doc Ock you got in both movies is not Doc Ock. Like, Doc Ock was a prick before he had his accident and got his powers. Everybody hated him. He had this chip on his shoulder. He wanted to rule the world, but he was just a geeky scientist. He was never going to be able to do it. So he just did science to make himself feel superior. And we didn't get that. So that's why.
That's totally valid criticism. I really enjoy Alfred Molina's Doc Ock in both of these movies. And I think it's interesting that he's different than some of the other characters where he doesn't just want to rule the world.
And we'll get into spoilers right now. Let's just get into spoilers now. Well, music cue here. But yeah, spoilers now. You've been warned. We're gonna talk about it. I do agree with you. Like, Doc Ock in this, based off the previous version of it in the Raimiverse, is fantastic. Like, when you take the continuation of this character, I love the direction they went with it. And, I think we need to explain the story a little bit more before we get into it. But I do agree with you.
I'm saying even in Spider-Man 2, like his first appearance, I like that he's a good guy that, is corrupted or whatever. Not even by his own ambition necessarily, but by the tentacles.
Right.
But that's not to say I wouldn't like to see the version that you're talking about in some live action too. But I'm happy that we have what we have.
The reason that I always liked Doc Ock, and just really quick, is he's basically the anti-Spider-Man. He's like if Peter Parker didn't have Uncle Ben.
Right, and that's dramatically interesting, and that's not what Alfred Molina is.
Yeah.
Now that we're in spoilers, my first question I wanted to ask you was: we saw the trailers where MJ falls and there's a gloved hand reaching out for her. Did you know that was going to be Andrew Garfield?
I assumed it was. I mean, obviously those images leaked months ago and was covered on mainstream news, like on late night talk shows. Like, Andrew Garfield finally got pissed. Like, I'm not going to answer this anymore. Just fucking watch the movie in December, kind of thing. So I had a feeling it was going to be him. I didn't definitively know, but I had a feeling. But I knew going into this movie that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were going to be in it. There was no doubt in my mind that was going to happen.
That specific moment just popped up on my screen, and I remember seeing that in the trailer and just being like, oh, they're going to redeem Andrew Garfield. Yeah. Dropping Gwen Stacy.
And it was good. That was a fantastic moment. It was so obvious in the last trailer when you see the three villains jumping through the sky and going in different directions. Clearly they're going after different Spider-Man. And then the Brazilian one where you actually see the lizard get kicked in the face, but there's nobody there kicking him.
So that moment happened, and we knew that that they were going to be on there, but seeing that moment with all three Spider-Man, I was disappointed that my theater didn't do a little woo. I think I might have said something.
There was enough, but it was so cool moments to see before that together. Though. There were so many.
That's such a niche thing. I don't think that more than 5 people in my theater probably saw the Brazilian trailer. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh no, most people didn't see that. But
for people like you and me,
the American
so cool
trailer, you saw that scene. It was just 3 villains jumping in 3 directions. It didn't make sense. But the thing that surprised me most about this is I thought that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire would show up in the last 10 minutes of the movie for maybe 3 or 4 minutes.
I also thought that Doctor Strange was going to be in the whole movie.
Yeah. Well, the trailer made it seem like Doctor Strange was going to be in it more, but he's really in it for minutes. And then he's locked in a pocket dimension for most of the movie.
Yeah. And they also changed they changed something from the trailers where
they changed a lot from the trailer.
But specifically to what we're talking about.
Dialogue of I'll let you reveal it because you brought it up.
Thank you. Specifically what we're talking about, Doctor Strange and Wong have a moment where Doctor Strange sort of lies to Wong and then winks at Peter that he's going to do the spell. And in the movie, it's a completely different exchange. Wong is aware of it, just says, leave me out of it. And he knows what's happening.
Yeah.
And I think the spell is a lot lower stakes when it opens up too, or when it actually happens.
No, initially it's not that bad. Well, and it's actually, the post-credit scene actually has the same dialogue from the trailer. They just moved it around a little bit. So Marvel is sneaky. They obviously they do this a lot where they change the dialogue, they change scenes, they put scenes in the trailer that's not in the movie, and vice versa. So but I was pleasantly surprised that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire were in a bulk of the latter half of the movie. They each got probably 20 to 25 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, and I really feel like all the villains too. This is true of everybody that's coming back from other movies, but especially Toby, and especially Andrew get so many moments to sort of correct things that have not been not aged very favorably in the previous movies. I think Andrew was running circles around the other two Spider-Men in a lot of the moments.
he was fantastic. So that's the
He
thing
was
that I
so
always
funny.
when I've always been kind of ambivalent about the MCU Spider-Man. Tom Holland. I think Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man because he has the Peter Parker and he has the Spider-Man stuff.
Yeah, he's the best. He's the best at doing both of those things.
Right. But Andrew Garfield, I just didn't think got the fair shit. Like his Spider-Man, and I've seen a lot of reviews being like, I don't like how they MCU'd Andrew Garfield. They made him too funny. And it's like, he was a funny guy, funny Spider-Man. Like in the very first Spider-Man, he's pretending to blow his nose with the webs, and he's like, hey, the police. And then the second movie, he's like pantsing the rhino and everything, and like cracking jokes. Like,
yeah,
he was a funny guy.
I remember
in those movies.
I remember that Toby. A complaint about Toby's Spider-Man was that he's not. He was like a little bit too serious. He wasn't quippy enough, like Spider-Man is in the comics. So I remember when they cast Andrew and they made those movies, that was like a big part of it. It was like, this Spider-Man is the quippy one that you know from your comics.
Yeah.
So we're giving you that.
I think Andrew Garfield was a fantastic Spider-Man. But the only thing I didn't like about his Spider-Man was he didn't get quippy as the stakes went up. Like once it got to the climax, he was all serious. And Spider-Man traditionally actually gets more quippy as the stakes get serious. But I didn't really like his Peter Parker. His Peter Parker, there was no real differentiation between him and Spider-Man, and he stood up to the bullies, and that part I didn't like as much.
Luckily, he's just being Spider-Man here.
Yeah. Now Tom Holland, I think Tom Holland's Peter Parker is the best, and his Spider-Man's pretty solid. Like he's not quite as quippy, but he still does his quips, and he's funny and engaging. But yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like they really gave each of these people chances to do callbacks, like Tobey Maguire's like, my back again. They do the little Spider-Man pointing meme on 2 different occasions, once while they're in the suits and once in the lab.
I was looking for that. I didn't really see it. They don't literally do the pointing though. They kind of do the vibe of the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one.
I wanted to literally see them point.
Yeah. So, but they kind of did, a similar thing. They also pulled the webbing kind of thing, like they talk about running out of webs, and they joke with Toby like, wait, that just comes out of you? He's like, I don't know how it works. Like I don't control it. Like you don't control breathing. So there was a lot of these really fun exchanges, and I just honestly didn't expect them to be there. I kind of thought that like Tom Holland Spider-Man would be fighting, these 5 villains, and then out of nowhere, like as he gets about to get defeated, they show up and help him save the day. But no, it wasn't that. And then like Tom Holland was even the leader of the 3 Spider-Man because he has experience working with the Avengers. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then the villains, like the way that this was handled was traditionally it's let's defeat the villains, and this was let's redeem the villains.
Yeah. And the movie redeemed all those villains, from their own movies too, not as characters,
it was
but like
fantastic. And then the surprise with Aunt May.
Yeah, that was heartbreaking.
That blew me away. I did not expect that at all, for them to kill off Aunt May and give her the "with great power comes great responsibility" line.
Yeah, as soon as I saw Goblin show up with the whatever his glider, like in that moment, I was like, oh, of course she's gonna die. It's the third movie. I saw she has to.
I saw that coming, and I was like, no.
Yeah. But like, I didn't. It made it makes perfect sense in the moment, but leading up to that, I wasn't thinking about it at all.
No, I did not. Like, yeah, as it's happening, you knew it was going to happen, but like, I did not think that was on the table for this movie. And the other thing that was interesting was, I've watched both of these movies, the previous ones. Other than fighting some aliens in Endgame and Infinity War, Tom Holland Spider-Man doesn't use his fists. Like, he doesn't. He uses his webs. He pulls things around. He doesn't punch people. In this one, he goes ham multiple times on Green Goblin. Like, this is the darkest, angriest Spider-Man we've seen, where like he's about to kill Norman Osborn multiple times, and I just did not expect that.
Yeah, I think they pulled it off really well. Green Goblin was so good too. Willem Dafoe, like genuinely terrifying.
Willem Dafoe was so good. Like, this is his best Green Goblin performance, and he's in all 3 of the original movies. Some of them are illusions, some of them are hallucinations, whatever. But like, he was so good in this. Yeah, so good.
Yeah. What'd you think?
We haven't even talked about like what the plot of the actual movie is.
We don't need to. This is spoilers.
but it's just
Let's
you have to watch it. Like, it's just something you have to see and experience with the crowd. Like, it was incredible seeing people clapping hands and enjoying this. And it was the first time going to the movies felt like I wasn't in a pandemic.
Yeah. Well,
which
prepare for that
is
to
good
be
and
taken
bad.
away from you. I think we're headed for another lockdown, buddy boy.
I don't think we are.
Well,
I don't think we are.
I mean, maybe we're not, but we're definitely going to have.
We're going to have a huge surge, and a lot of people. I think.
Anyway, that's not what this podcast is about. What did you think?
No,
of
it
Matt
is
Murdock,
about that. We always have to find a way to shoehorn that in.
Matt Murdock.
Matt Murdock. I also
cool.
knew that was happening. I had no doubt. The thing that blew my mind, that confused me on that was, I thought that the legal troubles were going to be more of a part of this movie, and they kind of just hand waved it away in the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah,
like Matt Murdock was just like, you're fine, but Happy, you're in trouble because you stole Stark technology after Stark's death, and it's not accounted for. But I kind of would have liked to see one of two things, like Spider-Man on the run, or Matt Murdock going and saying hey, we can see, we found Mysterio's body in a mocap suit. We can also look at the history of the drones and see what happened, or blah, blah, blah. Or we found one of the scientists that were working with Mysterio and gets him off. I would have liked to see Daredevil do a little bit of work getting him off.
Yeah, but I mean, just the logistics of a movie like this, there's no time for it.
There's so much packed into this movie, but I love that we established that he's still in the MCU. That was great.
I'm really curious to see how much of the Daredevil or the Marvel, the Netflix shows they carry over.
Yeah, because I mean, we'll do a quick spoiler for Hawkeye as well. Kingpin is back. Now we know Matt Murdock is back.
And they're playing the same versions of the characters, but none of the Netflix shows are canon to the MCU, so we don't know how much of the Netflix
how much
shows
of
actually
a
took place.
Soft reboot they're going to do.
Yeah.
So that's exciting. I think what excites me most about this, and this is also my biggest disappointment with this movie, so coming out of Far From Home, when I saw that in theaters, and then at the end when it's just Mysterio reveals that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, and we get, J. Jonah Jameson back. What really excited me about that reveal was, he's going to be a criminal. That means some people are going to believe him, some people aren't, and that's the thing that carried forward in this movie. But I was really excited because traditionally in the comic books, with the exception of a few periods, half of New York loves Spider-Man, half of New York hates Spider-Man. Some cops help him out, some cops shoot at him on sight. People don't really know. And I was and one of the biggest criticisms of Tom Holland's Spider-Man is that he relies on Stark tech. So I was oh great, after that last movie, he's not going to have access to Stark tech, because Stark Enterprises, even though Tony Stark said Pepper can't be giving technology to a wanted fugitive, so he's going to have to go back to relying on himself. And half the city likes him, half the city hates him, and it was going to be getting us to the comic book status quo. And then that kind of didn't happen initially. And I was oh man.
Oh, it does happen. It's just not what this movie's about.
It's not the same. But then
it happens at the end of this movie.
My disappointment, though, is, and I love it, at the end of the movie, spoiler for the end of the movie, is the beginning of the movie, he's trying to create a spell where everyone forgets that he's Spider-Man. And then at the end of the movie, because of all the merging timelines of blah, 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 now he has to take that spell a step further and just erase Peter Parker from everyone's memory, not just the forget that I'm Spider-Man. So now the stakes are so high. His girlfriend, his friends, all the other superheroes, Happy Hogan, everybody, they know of Spider-Man, but they don't know Peter Parker. So people are just going to have memories of Spider-Man and his actions, but nobody's going to link it to anyone. So he ends up at this shitty apartment at the end of the movie. Half the city hates him. There are people who believe Mysterio. There's people who don't believe it anymore. And so this is now the most comic accurate Spider-Man we got, because we did not get that even in the Sam Raimi versions with J. Jonah Jameson hating him. The city still gave him the key to the city, and everyone was writing songs about Spider-Man, and everybody loved Spider-Man and waving to Spider-Man as they swing by. We're finally getting a Spider-Man that's struggling, that people don't love, and I'm excited, but it's kind of the same feeling I had at the last movie.
Yeah, and I think Spider-Man's also in a very unique position right now. Where he's I think the only character in the MCU, the only major character that people don't know who he is.
Yeah,
he's the only one with a secret identity.
Now he is for sure, and he was before too.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm just really excited about that. Well, and I really want to see the implications of this. Is he was an Avenger?
Well,
Like he did that, and so people are going to remember fighting side by side with him,
right,
but they're not
going
to remember him.
So there's a lot of things that this movie sets up, or the implications that arise from the end of this movie. Let's just try and go through them quickly without spending too much time on any one yet. Post-credit scene, Venom. That's going to happen.
Oh yeah,
Like, well,
that
let
didn't
me
make
actually
any sense,
let me start out a little bit bigger. This movie feels like it sets up a new trilogy of Spider-Man movies, which kind of blows my mind, because I think there's only going to be those 3 Iron Man movies. There's only going to be those 3 Cap movies until we get a different character. This feels like we're getting 6 Tom Holland Spider-Mans. You know what I mean?
He's still acting like he doesn't want to do it, but I think he's just holding out for more money and
I've heard him say
creative
he wants to
controls.
do it. Yeah.
He has said that traditionally up until about a month ago. About a month ago, he's like, I think I'm going to move on.
Yeah,
but I think that's just him gunning for more money.
So it's setting up a Venom symbiote movie or saga or whatever. They've talked about doing Secret Wars, so I'm sure it'll as a TV show. So I'm sure it'll tie into that. MJ has had her mind wiped. That doesn't need to happen in the same movie as the Venom issue. So that's a second movie right there. He has to, if they didn't imply this necessarily, but I think they must be talking about what you're talking about, where half the city hates him, half the city loves him, blah blah blah. Everyone has to remember who Spider-Man is now, or not. It kind of sets up Civil War 2, where he does the big unmasking.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. The Venom thing, I'm just gonna say, I kind of hated that because it didn't make sense. Like, the one rule they had with the people coming in from other universes were people who knew who Spider-Man was were the ones coming through. And at the end of the movie, it was just like, you saw shadows of the Rhino, you saw shadows of Kraven and everything. So villains we haven't actually seen. And like the Rhino was more like the comic book Rhino, just like a cutout. It didn't look like a giant mech from like Andrew Garfield one. But Venom doesn't know who Tom Hardy's Venom doesn't know who Spider-Man is. So why did he get pulled through? There's a fan theory out there.
Have you not seen Let There Be Carnage?
I have seen that, but it doesn't make any sense.
They talk about it in that.
Well, no, because it doesn't make any sense, because he was transported. You see the purple flashes and stuff that like indicate the spell, and you saw the red and the red and orange kind of runes. So it was the spell that brought him forward. But prior to the spell, he didn't know. So he gets transported into the MCU world, sees the news report like Peter Parker, Spider-Man, like he sees the end of Far From Home, and he's just there, and he's asking questions to the bartender like, "What's going on?" That didn't make sense that he pulled through, because that Tom Hardy Venom, there is no Spider-Man in that universe.
That movie, is there? Yeah, but in Venom, Let There Be Carnage, they in that scene, he has a conversation with Tom Hardy. Venom has a conversation with Tom Hardy, where he says that all the symbiotes.
There's like a hive mind.
Why didn't you just let me say it?
Well, like because it doesn't make sense, because it's a different universe. So
they say multiversal hive mind.
Oh, do they?
That's what I was trying to say, but you cut me off.
Yeah, I've read that. I think that's a cop out. I think that's just a really shitty way. Like, I think they should have just came up with their own way of getting the symbiote in the MCU. I honestly don't like that cop out. Like, I think it's a really weak story element.
I liked it.
I hate it. I think it's they should have just. I absolutely hated it. But I also really don't like the Venom movies. But to each their own.
I really like the first one.
I only like the scene where he's fighting the cops in the hotel.
But I like it because it's bad.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But no, everything else you brought up, though, potentially having him unveil himself, I think the biggest thing I'm most excited about with the people not knowing his identity is we can get the classic MJ. And they actually made her, like, the Mary Jane. Like, they call her, Michelle Jones something Watson. So, she is, for all intents and purposes, she's just not Mary Jane, but she is MJ Watson, which is the name of the, the traditional version. But because she doesn't know who he is, maybe in a movie or two, or maybe the post credit scene for the next movie could be him getting set up on a blind date, and it's her, and she can have that line like, "Face tiger, you hit the jackpot," and it's like that because that's how they met in every other, in most versions, it's a blind date.
Yeah. I think another thing that they set up is like at the end of the movie, I had the sense that Mary Jane or MJ was gonna have another boyfriend or something, because they don't say how much time has passed, and I think that's got to be something they deal with in one of the sequels. Like
I thought it was gonna be Ned for a second.
Yeah,
for a second, it seemed like Ned and her were gonna be in a relationship, and then it wasn't that. But No, I really like the implication that he's going to have to deal with all these people that he knows. Like, this is actually, as much as I say it's status quo Spider-Man, it's also like super uncharted waters because he literally has no friends, no family, no support structure whatsoever.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if MJ does end up briefly dating somebody else, that gives Tom Holland Spider-Man a chance to maybe meet Gwen Stacy.
That's the other thing, or even Betty Brant. It sets up so many things. Like Betty Brant, even though he doesn't know her, you know, she won't remember him. He actually dated Betty Brant first in the comic books at the Daily Beagle. So it could be entirely possible he starts taking pictures of Spider-Man to start trying to sway public opinion. He dates Betty Brant. He can date Gwen Stacy, Black Cat. You know,
Marvel
all these different people can come in.
I feel like Marvel, especially Sony, is going to want... but sorry, I'm cutting myself off. It sounds like Spider-Man might have a little slut phase, which I think would be great.
I hope so.
He just bangs a bunch of these chicks that end up becoming superheroes.
But he totally could.
I think that Marvel and Sony would not be able to resist the Gwen Stacy Spider Gwen.
That'll have to happen at some point.
It's got to.
Yeah, and then
especially
Black
if the
Cat,
rights revert to, or if Sony takes back.
Black Cat will have to come. You know, that's another opportunity that they can do. It's just it's really exciting that the places that they can go with this character, not having him tied down to the same love interests that we've pretty much seen from all other versions. So no, it's super exciting, the places that this can go. And I have to say, this is the last thing I want to say, just because we got to start wrapping up. But my favorite on-screen live action costume is in this movie. It's at the very end of the movie. You barely see it because he doesn't have access to Stark Tech anymore. At the end of the movie, you see a sewing machine, you see some extra fabric, and you see the most comic accurate costume of all time. Like, it is just a spandex red and blue suit. It doesn't have raised webbing or anything like that, and it looks incredible. It looks exactly like the classic Ditko or maybe John Romita Sr. Drawings, but it is just classic Spider-Man suit. It's a little shiny. I fucking love it. I was very
excited to see that.
I mean, I have a ton of figures and stuff. I brought it, I talked about it earlier. But those like really expensive, like $300 1/6 scale that are like super realistic. I pre-ordered my first one ever like 6 months ago. That's just like a classic Spider-Man, but it's from the video game from like 2018. But I'm like, I got a good job now. I'm, a little bit older. I can afford like $200 is not as much of a investment as it was for me even 5 years ago. I'm going to treat myself to something that's expensive just because I want it.
Treat yourself.
If they come out with the Hot Toys version of that final suit at the end of the movie, I don't care if it's $1,000. I'm going to get it. Like, that's how much I loved that costume.
You should get the suit to wear yourself.
No, I'm too fat. I need to get ripped first.
No, you'll be like...
That honestly, that thought crossed my mind. I'm like, there's going to be
Peter B. Parker from Spider-Verse.
Yeah. Well, no, it's funny. I thought about it. No joke. Last night I was thinking about it and I'm like, I need to get going to the gym again. Like, I was in a car accident a few months ago, and I was told I can't work out as much, but I got the clearance to go back to my normal workout routine. So I'm like, okay, I should get fit enough to get a Spider-Man costume and get this new comic book suit. And I'm like, so now I'm like, I need to do it.
Do you want to get ripped with me?
Yeah, let's get ripped, bro.
Yeah, we should next Halloween. Let's do a couple's costume where like you're Spider-Man and I'll be Venom.
There we go.
Yeah, it'll be fun for us.
And Scarlet could be MJ or Gwen, and Katrina could be MJ or Gwen or Black Cat or something.
Yeah, or maybe Spider Gwen.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. That'll be fun.
All right, cool. Done.
Assuming Halloween is safe next year.
Yeah. Way to end on a down note.
But no, I mean, this movie is fantastic, and I said it's like my second favorite one, but it is still just I want to go back and watch it again.
Yeah,
like
I'll see it again.
I kind of feel like I might just go watch it right now after recording this. Like, I kind of want to go and watch it again right now.
You should.
Have fun. And like so many other movies are coming out this week, and I'm just like, The Matrix, Kingsman, and I'm more excited about seeing Spider-Man 2 again.
Yeah.
Than seeing those other movies that I'm very, very excited for, both of them.
I went to see West Side Story today for our podcast that we recorded earlier, and I was feeling a little not chill in the theater. So many people at the Grove not wearing masks. And we have tickets for...
How is the Grove as an AMC theater now? I haven't been over there.
It's good. Same.
Good. It's the same as it was
So
before.
many people at the Grove not wearing masks, and it sucked. And we have our tickets for Matrix on Wednesday, and I'm like on the fence about it. Like, even Keanu Reeves said, like, yeah, if you can watch it at home, maybe watch it at home. And I'm considering it. Like, I want to see it on a big screen, But
I have access through work to a 300-inch screen, and I'm thinking about watching it there.
that's what I would do that if I had that.
Yeah. We'll talk off air.
Okay.
But I mean that's it. I think, we didn't go into the plot too much. Like, we obviously spoiled some of these big cameos and characters and whatnot, but we didn't really talk about the plot. And so,
I think that's okay.
if you haven't watched that and you've listened to this for whatever reason, that's odd, but you can still go and enjoy the film. But if you liked this movie, let us know what you thought. Let us know what your fan theories. Let us know what you would like to see going forward. But once again, thank you guys for being sponsors of us, patrons of us. Thank you for supporting the show.
Thank you.
This is something that we're doing just for you guys.
For you.
And we love doing it. So thank you guys for supporting us and whatnot. But by all means, follow Alex. Please give us the plugs for if there's any new patrons who are listening to this episode.
Yeah, I'm on TikTok, Twitter, and Letterboxd at Pulisci, Pulisci, and on Instagram at Dyslexic, DYSAlexIC.
And you can follow everything MDXpods related at MDXpods.com, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all at MDXpods. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks.